What's going on, everyone? John Matrix here. Hope you're having a wonderful day whenever you at and whenever you are watching this. Today, we're going to check out another one of Luetin's videos, Space Marine Creation and Recruitment, your guide to becoming an Astartes, Warhammer 40k lore. So we're going to check that out here today. Just a quick little announcement. I had posted a community, I posted a post. Please allow myself to introduce myself. Anyway, I had put a post up in the community tab about doing a community game night with Darktide. Decent enough amount of people were interested in it. So I think we're going to try and do that, not this coming Saturday, but the Saturday after, December 9th. I'm going to post another post in the community tab, you know, with the full announcement, but I just figured I'd, you know, announce it on the video here. So Saturday, the 9th, I think is what I'm going to shoot for. As long as nothing comes up in between, that's what I'm going to plan for. I'm on the East Coast of the United States, so I figure we'd probably start maybe around 5 p.m. Eastern and, you know, play for maybe 4 to 6 hours, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I will do my best to get as many people in as I can. I want to try to do at least, you know, 1 or 2 games with the group and then rotate people out. And obviously my Discord, you know, I have is open. So if you guys want to join the Discord, I encourage you guys. And if you want to find groups to play with, and if you guys want to just, you know, after we've played, you know, feel free to keep playing with other groups of people and, you know, have fun and talk and meet some new friends, etc., etc. So yeah, we're going to look at shooting for Saturday, the 9th of December. Like I said, around like 5 p.m. Eastern, and play for, you know, maybe 4 to 6 hours. I'll stream it. I'll do my best to rotate people in and out as best as I can. Anyone that is a member will get a little bit of priority to that, because I mean, they're helping me out monetarily, so you know, I got to give them some extra benefits here. So anyone that is a member, you'll get a little bit of priority, but I will do my absolute best to get as many people in that show up that want to play as possible. If for whatever reason I can't get you in, you know, if there's just that many people that show up and want to play, and for whatever reason I just can't get enough people in, I will put your name on, you know, the top of the list, and the next time we do one, I will make sure to get you guys in. So now that we've got those out of the way, yeah, let's just jump into the video here. And like I said, we're going to check out Luetin's Space Marine Creation and Recruitment, your guide to becoming an Astartes, Warhammer 40,000 lore. Check it out. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. Yes, very stoic and impressive. Am I missing something?
They shall be my finest warriors.
Okay.
These men who give themselves to me. Like clay I shall mould them, and in the furnace of war I shall forge them. They shall be of iron will and steely sinew. In great armour I shall clad them, and with the mightiest weapons they shall be armed. They will be untouched by plague or disease, no sickness shall blight them. They shall have such tactics, strategies and machines that no foe will best them in battle. They are my bulwark against the terror. They are the defenders of humanity. They are my Space Marines, and they shall know no fear.
So, they are susceptible to like Nurgle Plague stuff, right? I mean, because like a whole legion like turned, right? He said they're like immune to disease in this quote here. Hello, go backwards. Yeah, there shall know no sickness. They'll be untouched by plague or disease. No sickness shall blight them. Kind of feel like that's not true. I mean, but what do I know?
Tactics, strategies and machines that no foe will best them in battle. They are my bulwark against the terror. They are the defenders of humanity. They are my Space Marines, and they shall know no fear. Space Marines are humanity's most elite fighting force. They're the defenders of civilization, but their immense power is forged through a harsh selection process, extreme genetic and body modifications. This grueling transformation kills many recruits, and those who do survive it are left arguably barely human. The conversion from weak mortal to demi-godlike superhuman is one gifted to only a tiny amount of humans in the 41st millennium. And Astartes, when his transformation is complete, will be stronger, tougher, mentally more powerful by factors than an ordinary human. And while a Space Marine's prime mission is to protect humanity, their physical disparity from ordinary common humans can actually leave many Astartes to look down on these lesser common humans.
Yeah, they see normal people as like lesser than. I always find that kind of an interesting like irony that the Emperor did all this stuff and set all this stuff up to essentially protect the average, everyday, normal human so that, you know, humanity can spread throughout the galaxy, etc. But, you know, Primarchs and Astartes and a lot of these, you know, his you know, main fighting force, they look down upon people, you know, because they think they're better than. And that's, I think, also just speaks to, in general, the flaws, you know, of man, that they're just enhanced even more in these enhanced beings. Hello?
Leave humanity.
Backwards, thank you.
Their physical disparity from ordinary common humans can actually leave many Astartes to look down on these lesser common humans, while others will feel a renewed sense of dedication to protect those who can barely protect themselves. It's important to remember that Space Marines are the defenders of humanity and not the rulers of it. Humans, for better or worse, have been the leaders of the Imperium of Man until recently with the return of Primarch Guilliman.
And then I think they also kind of resent that. Oh, at least the Primarchs did. That was one of the issues that brought some of the dissent up in the Primarchs, was because, you know, the ruling council or advisory council to the Emperor, I forget what it's called now off the top of my head, but anyway, the council that was in charge of governing all the day-to-day stuff and, you know, the economy and the backbone of, you know, human civilization were just run by regular humans, and none of those positions of power were ever given to the Primarchs, and that, you know, caused a lot of resentment. So I could understand the same happening for a lot of the Space Marines too. You know, they have a lot that I could see some Space Marines from various chapters being resentful that they are essentially just, you know, tools
of the Imperium of Man until recently with the return of Primarch Guilliman. While the transformation of a human to Space Marine is complex, you'll often hear the terminology of a gene seed be used. Now, a gene seed is not literally a seed, but it is a specific organ that each Astartes carries with seed-like qualities. It's a term used to describe generally the genetic material of an Astartes. It's more accurately the cells and DNA required to engineer a human into an Astartes. The gene seed, more specifically though, refers to the Space Marines' progenoid glands, and the clue is in the name there when you think of progeny. These organs in a Space Marine respond to the other genetic implants they have and replicate DNA.
Interesting.
Essentially, they are, in a manner of speaking, an asexual form of reproduction, which is why when a Space Marine is fatally wounded on a battlefield, an apothecary will fight to recover his gene seed. It's also why, yes, Space Marines do not require heterosexual reproduction.
So, I guess the question I would have for then is, if they take a gene seed from one Space Marine and implant it in another, does any of the traits from the previous Space Marine pass over? Like, is there, like, any kind of, I don't know if necessarily consciousness is the right word I'm looking for, but, like multiple personality situation maybe, you know, and any kind of personality traits or anything like that from the previous Space Marine, if it gets transferred over into a new Space Marine for whatever reason, you know, does stuff like that happen? And does that cause psychological issues or psychological breaks, or would it, you know, possibly create greater fortitude in them, you know, et cetera, et cetera?
It's also why, yes, Space Marines do not require heterosexual reproduction. 5 years from implantation, a Space Marine's neck progeny glands can be harvested, but the chest glands won't be harvested up until 10 years. Space Marines essentially depend on themselves to produce new Marines for the chapter. Lastly, in this general sphere of discussion, to answer a very commonly discussed topic, are Space Marines actually castrated? And then, how do they excrete waste? Well, I can't actually recall anywhere in written law this being noted, so if anybody has a specific point of reference, please do link it. But my speculation, based on a few things that I've kind of looked at, is that pretty much the canon opinion is that Space Marines have no sexual drive. However, when it comes to excretion, it's true that their armor is also an environment suit that would cycle and process their own waste, much like a still suit in the Dune universe. Also, Space Marines do not live in their armor, although they may wear it for extended periods of time. It can...
You know, I would think that... Because the plan the Emperor had is that when everything was said and done, and the galaxy's at peace, and his plan has seen, you know, its end, it's been brought to fruition, he wanted the Astartes, the Space Marines, and the Primarchs to be able to live like normal people, right? So I would think that wouldn't be the case, you know? Because, I mean, one of the primary drives of humanity is to procreate. So, but then again, it might be a form of control, and when the war is over, maybe he thought again that there wouldn't be another use for Space Marines, and that eventually, once their lifespan ran out, they would just die, and they'd be a species that would just die off, and then normal humans could just be normal humans. You know, I don't know.
Do not live in their armor, although they may wear it for extended periods of time. It can be removed. It's entirely possible that their external genitals are removed and they have implants to take care of waste, but I've got nothing to see that it points towards this. So it's an unknown, but it's not something that's critically really important in the scheme of things. It's equally possible that it's just seen as an organ as with everything else and they just leave it all be. Now, before we look further into how a Space Marine is forged in the 41st millennium, let's remind ourselves how they were created over history. Now, the first form of Space Marine was originally created by the Emperor during the unification wars of the late 30th millennium.
The Thunder Legions,
Earth at this
technically,
time
I think,
was a
right?
barren wasteland of scavengers and barbaric warring tribes after civilization.
Although he started creating the Custodes back then too, but they were just extremely complicated and time-consuming to make because they were like his idea of like the perfect like human soldier.
A barren wasteland of scavengers and barbaric warring tribes after civilization had imploded as a result of the Age of Strife. Earth, being cut off from its supply routes in the warp, cannibalized itself and fell into total anarchy. After the Emperor originally created techno-barbarians, a crude adapted form of super soldier, he would form them later into the Thunder Warriors. These warriors were brutal, powerful, and most importantly, highly unstable.
I think in some ways they're even more powerful than the Astartes. Like physically, they were like tougher, able to take more damage, and physically they were just like brute raw power. They were greater than Astartes too, but they were just like you said, not necessarily uncontrollable, but just unstable. They were just like, yeah, they were just unstable, and I think they were prone to psychological breaks, right?
These warriors were brutal, powerful, and most importantly, highly unstable. The Emperor knew that he wouldn't be able to work with these soldiers forged in the fires of anarchy beyond the unification of Earth's warring tribes, and so he secretly constructed his genetic facilities in a fortress deep below vast mountain ranges on Earth. Here, he would, with some few remaining gene rights, create his Primarchs using his own genetic material as a template. Then subsequently, the very first of the new breed of warriors, the Space Marines, or Astartes. But what are the Thunder Warriors? Imperial records state that the Thunder Warriors were nearly all wiped out during a particularly bloody battle at the end of the Unification Wars on Mount Ararat.
You know, I guess it's said that some of the Thunder Warriors survived and they just went into hiding. I wonder if they had any descendants, or if that's, again, part of the creation of the Thunder Warriors, was that he put that in their genetic code that they couldn't, you know, have offspring.
A particularly bloody battle at the end of the Unification Wars on Mount Ararat. Conveniently, the new Legiones Astartes were created readily to replace them. Now, records from this time are understandably fragmented, but described eyewitness accounts from the few Thunder Warriors to survive this battle, like Arcturnus, stated that it was in fact the Emperor himself who massacred the Thunder Warriors, Others have stated that it was also in collaboration with his custodian guard. In several instances that occurred since this time where Thunder Warriors have appeared and faced their Astartes brothers, the Thunder Warriors have nearly always managed to inflict casualties beyond expectation before they are finally felled. This gives some indication of how powerful they were as warriors and why the Emperor felt they were perhaps too dangerous given their power and psychological instability to function as a disciplined fighting and defensive force for the new Imperium. Regardless, this whole situation is a dark and little spoken of episode for the Emperor of Man.
I could see like the Thunder Warriors kind of being compared to like a human version of the Orcs, where like they're just big and strong and just brute power, and all I want to do is fight, and they don't give a fuck about anything else.
Man, vocalizing these events would no doubt have some Inquisition or Ecclesiarchy on their way to you very promptly. With the Thunder Warriors killed in the Battle of Mount Ararat, the new Space Marines, the Legiones Astartes, would come to the fore. Unlike their Thunder Warrior forebears, they would undergo rigorous mental training as well as physical and genetic modifications. This would give them immense physical traits as well as being near unbreakable with their mental conditioning. The new Marines were initially segregated into 20 legions. This separation was not for simple organizational purposes. Each
18
legion was imbued with genetic traits from their Primarch, and as such this impacted their character and behaviour. To ensure unity, the Emperor designated them to stay together in their legions to reduce friction and ensure cohesion of the Astartes brothers. Through recruiting and conquest of human colonies as the Imperium expanded, so did the Astartes legions. What had begun as a handful of Marines swelled to tens of thousands during the Crusades. This would lead later to heavy damage caused during the heresy after the Primarchs holding such immense power being the sole commanders of each Space Marine legion. After that period of chaotic incursion, Roboute Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines, would draft the Codex Astartes, and the remaining loyalist Primarchs would, after much consideration, agree at best that the Space Marine legions be split into chapters. This was to ensure no Space Marine Legion could wield the sheer weight of power they had during the Crusades and subsequent heresy. This was known as the Second Founding. Each of these chapters would take a permanent homeworld or fortress monastery in the Imperium. The Codex Astartes states that each chapter would be 1,000 battle brothers in number and manage its own recruitment. A specific development in the creation of a Space Marine was discovered after the Horus Heresy.
So I would assume then that probably certain chapters are more harsh in recruiting than others, and not necessarily just in their recruiting practices, but once they're actually recruited and, you know, they pass all their genetic modifications and whatnot, their actual training, I would assume these different chapters have different ways and trainings and things that they specialize in, and certain ones are more rigorous than others. I would assume the Grey Knights would probably be up there as like the Navy SEALs of like training, you know, going through, you know, Hell Week or whatever, you know, you want to call it. But I guess if I am right and this is the case, let me know what you guys, you know, think or know is considered to be like the toughest chapter, legion, whatever, you know, to be a part of as far as, you know, their rigorous training methods and whatnot.
A specific development in the creation of a Space Marine was discovered after the Horus Heresy: weaknesses in the gene seed. Now, as I previously explained, the gene seed is the core biological component in the creation of a Space Marine. During the Heresy, Space Marines were created on a massive scale, and as with any biological replication process, if you do this on a large scale, then mutations and errors can occur in this DNA replication. So another result of the implementation of the Codex Astartes by Guilliman was to slow the process of creating a Space Marine, to more closely monitor their genetic material and the material implanted within new recruits to ensure purity and expunge defects.
I would also think another way to do that would be to kind of also do the opposite, where you train more people to be able to filter those things out better. So they've got more people in the process of creating a Space Marine, more people doing checks and balances on them, so that, you know, they're monitored and, you know, all these mutations and whatnot don't happen. Or potentially, if there's like a positive mutation, they can then study it and see how they want to go with that, if they want to get rid of it or not, or, you know, maybe test certain things, create new chapters, you know, or add them as like special units in other chapters, you know, whatever. But I would think that would be the way they would want to go, but, you know, what do I know? I don't live in the 40k universe, and I'm not, you know, a Primarch.
And the material implanted within new recruits to ensure purity and expunge defects. Guilliman would also establish core genetic banks on Terra to ensure a stock of genetics existed.
Smart.
These pure sources.
It's kind of interesting to me. There's a lot of things that Guilliman does that are very smart, that seem very logical, and it makes me wonder why the Emperor didn't do a lot of these things, because he's obviously, the Emperor is extremely bright. Maybe it was just because he's focused on other things. Maybe it's just part of his flaws of his personality, or he was so wrapped up in doing other things and trying to get to other things like his webway project, etc., that those things he didn't deem as much of a priority. And maybe there were things that he planned on doing later once he got certain things established. You know, I don't know.
Banks on Terra to ensure a stock of genetics existed. These pure sources would provide new material for the foundings of Astartes chapters and also prevent any further contamination. As previously described, each chapter is responsible for its own replenishment. It chooses where and how to locate potential Space Marine candidates. Many will recruit solely from their own homeworld, but others will reach out to hive worlds of the Imperium to locate powerful and resilient fighters who have shown promise and an unnatural ability in combat.
And from what I understand, Space Marines in a lot of worlds are kind of like a mythological thing, you know, like there's a lot of worlds out there where they've never seen a Space Marine. They're kind of like a mythological warrior of, you know, legendary abilities. So like, I would think for a lot of people, they would, you know, being recruited, you know, to be a Space Marine would be like one of the highest honors you could get.
And resilient fighters who have shown promise and an unnatural ability in combat, even potentially recruiting from gang fighters in hive cities. Feral planets can also be good for selection, as the humans here are physically tough and have to deal with daily hardships more frequently than some other Imperial planets. Surprisingly, less recruits actually appear from the militaristic worlds like fortress planets, maybe because although knowing the lives of military discipline, they haven't endured the true horror and hardships that come from the rougher ends of Imperial life.
I would also think they might not want to thin numbers out from those worlds, because a lot of those worlds are there specifically to defend against certain things, like what Cadia was holding, you know, the Eye of Terra before that all fell.
Any candidate for a Space Marine will be usually young, between the ages of 10 and 15 years old. Obviously they need to be strong, healthy, and fiercely loyal to the Imperium. Often on worlds where recruitment occurs, young male humans who show exceptional skill or strength are pushed hard to give them the best chance of potential recruitment. Candidates can occasionally be as old as 20, but the full effect of their biological conversions may not be as effective or complete.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I would think they would want to get them earlier, not just for like the mental programming, but also just the genetic programming, because their bodies are still, you know, you're still growing, and by the time you reach 20, you're nearing the end of your, you know, growth period. I mean, by then, typically your brain and some other, you know, parts of the body, the only things that are still forming, but typically by then, most of your body's kind of like set, you know, your height, your you know, generally your height, build, and you know, muscle density, all that kind of stuff are kind of set until, you know, I mean, obviously you can modify some of those things by, you know, exercising, but, you know, I would think they would want to get them before or as close to puberty as possible, so that when they do a lot of these genetic modifications, their bodies can be enhanced along with their natural growth.
Full effect of their biological conversions may not be as effective or complete. Standard trials for Space Marine recruitment often involve combat, endurance, perhaps hunting of some extremely dangerous indigenous animal, and for the few who survive the tasks set by the Astartes who are there to supervise, the rewards are beyond estimation.
I would bet.
It's difficult to describe just how revered Space Marines are to ordinary citizens of the Imperium. While they wouldn't be directly worshipped, they are certainly individuals with godlike reverence and awe. Many humans in the Imperium will go their entire lives without ever even seeing an Astartes, and they may only arrive on an Imperial planet once in a generation. On some worlds, they are even somewhat mythical. So for a family on an Imperial world to have their son chosen for Space Marine recruitment and candidacy would be an honor beyond imagination.
See, and that would be a cool part of a show or series, like seeing, you know, the recruitment, you know, phase. Just seeing the how everything happens from the perspective of, you know, a young, you know, teenage boy, you know, who's extremely physically capable, gets chosen to be recruited, and going through that whole process, and then becoming a Space Marine. That would be pretty. I think that would be a pretty sick show in and of itself. You know, having learned how to survive, going through all the trials, you know, combat, etc. Obviously, rivalries would probably form with other recruits because they all want to be chosen, they all want to be the best, etc., etc., etc. I think that'd be a pretty dope show, and within and of itself. And then that could lead into another show where once the recruit actually passes everything, you know, they become a Space Marine and they go do Space Marine stuff.
And candidacy would be an honor.
Just send me my check. Anyone that sees that, hears that, and they make a show out, just send me my check. It's all good, man.
Beyond imagination. But from some perspectives, bittersweet, in as all likelihood they may never see them again once they have been accepted, and in very high possibility will probably die in later processes. But it's nonetheless the highest honor.
Well, and I mean, even if they do survive, then they're going to outlive any other family members who aren't, you know, Space Marines. Anyway, you know, like, it could be in, yeah, that's just how it's going to happen.
To serve the Emperor and the Imperium in this way, and would no doubt lead to adulation, even possible special treatment for families after the fact. Ordinary citizens understand that to be accepted for the conversion to the Astartes, the Emperor's chosen warriors, is nothing short of becoming a demigod. Then again, you could just as easily have been recruited from a hive world full of daily extreme violence, and your gang was just forcibly made to participate in the trials, and you were simply the only one left alive at the end. So that's your flip side of the coin. Pray you never seek acceptance to the Grey Knights. I'll cover that later. Despite all the physical and mental requirements for candidacy, another element is spiritual purity. In the 41st millennium, Imperial society is heavily...
That artwork is dope, man. There's so much artwork and stuff for the 40k universe that's just awesome.
Religious, worshipping the god Emperor, and most importantly, decrying the ruinous powers of chaos. Chaplains and the ecclesiarchy will continually monitor society around Astartes' recruitment sources to ensure that there are no signs of taint by the dark forces of chaos. With the easy part over, the selected candidates, now known as aspirants, will begin the ritual process of becoming a Space Marine. This may be a formal process of reciting scripture, or it could involve further trials. These could take place on the homeworld or result in immediate departure for the aspirant. Each chapter has their own private and guarded initiations. Some of these can be heavily traumatic and are usually significantly harder tests designed to break those who show even the smallest cracks of weakness. These trials for the young aspirants may even include ritual slaughter, scarification, even amputation and bloodletting. It's all designed to prove their commitment, loyalty, and unwavering faith in the...
I mean, it would have to be like the harshest recruitment, or the trials. They would just have to be super duper harsh, man. They just would. I mean, with how the universe is, and with everything that's out there, and the things that you're gonna face. Yep.
Astartes chapter. Unsurprisingly, some aspirants do not pass this phase of testing, physically or mentally. Aspirants will continue periods of testing and examination as well as actual live combat during their period as a recruit for the Space Marine chapter. And some of these trials may be cleverly disguised as coming-of-age rituals, other celebrations some more combat-based. All, though, will be observed carefully by senior members of the chapter and chaplains who will be assessing key traits and behaviours, looking for candidates who fulfil their exacting requirements. Some of these aspirants from Feral worlds or even other worlds may not be truly aware of what Space Marines are, and this innocence may in some way protect them from making overthought errors that cost them later. Still, some chapters actually take little interest in these early stages and will only actually become involved later once aspirants have been further thinned down. The whole process is a physical and psychological minefield. Some challenges could be unachievable, while others the simple act of survival is enough to merit approval to progress to the next stage. All the tests put to Space Marine aspirants are designed to test every element of their being to the limit and expose any weaknesses that are present, as well as learn about how they handle and make judgments on situations they are presented with. While the recruitment age for these aspirants is undoubtedly young, it's worth remembering that the nightmare environment of the 41st millennium is undoubtedly very harsh, and so growing up and becoming an adult quickly is something which many learn to do, and so their age shouldn't necessarily dictate your judgment of them based on our current period in time. Standard Astartes trials for these young recruits can include knowledge of self. Astartes look at recruits' mental strength equally to the physical. The horrors they will face in their lives as a Space Marine, despite later conditioning, require the strongest character in a recruit to be successful and worthy. They may use a chapter librarian to impose psychic horrors on a recruit to see if they survive the nightmares they're forced to witness. He may be forced to take drugs and face the worst parts of his own psyche. The stress and trauma of this trial can often physically affect their bodies as well, so in many ways this becomes the ultimate test for recruits. Completion of this trial will undoubtedly fundamentally alter the young recruit forever. Some chapters, like the Imperial Fists, consider this kind of mental testing especially important, but do so by exposing their recruits to literal physical pain, and we use devices like the subtly titled pain glove. These hook into the nervous system of the recruit and inflict horrific pain, but also maintain their consciousness well past what a normal individual could handle.
Interesting. So it's like, I don't know if any of you guys know about, I've seen some documentaries about some tribes in the Amazon, and some of the coming of age rituals they do down there have them like take bullet ants, which are supposed to be like the most painful insect sting on the planet, and they fill these gloves that they make with like bullet ants, and you just have to stick your hands in them and like deal with that for a certain amount of time. And if you the longer you go, the more praised you get, but after a certain amount of time you kind of like pass the trial. It sounds very similar to that.
The result will either be a mentally toughened but probably scarred individual, or a complete mental breakdown and death. An obvious and standard test for many recruits is exposure. Most worlds of the Imperium have unforgiving environments, and so sending out recruits into these wastes with little to survive with is an easy way to tell who is strong enough as a candidate. Space Marine apothecaries can rebuild damaged individuals, so the test is less of can you survive without consequences, and more simply, can you survive?
Right.
Many worlds are severely irradiated, frozen wastes, toxic wastelands, or ashen wastes, where planets have suffered total ecological collapse. Alternately, a planet could also be a literal jungle full of horrific creatures, small and large, ready to tear you to pieces or just melt your face off. As stated, the test is simple: survive for a set period of time. It will also likely involve some object of crossing a distance from A to B, so as to avoid recruits just digging a hole somewhere and sitting in it until time has elapsed. Some of the tests could well be impossible to complete and are simply assessing who can survive longest or travel furthest before dying or near death. The Ultramarines and Space Wolf chapters are known to favour exposure testing. A fairly self-explanatory trial, recruits are pitted against one another in one-on-one combat. When the last few remain, the assessing Astartes will usually halt the assessment.
Yeah, I figured that would probably be one of the most common ones. They would obviously want to get an assessment of who's got the best fighting prowess and, you know, grade them accordingly from there.
The type of duel could vary between armed or unarmed combat, consecutive combat, or recruits switching out on completing rounds. There is one constant though, and that is it's always a fight to the death. Again, apothecaries are able to heal most ordinary human wounds with ease, so these fights are often fairly no-holds-barred brutal affairs. Amputation and heavy trauma being the norm. Unsurprisingly, duels are the Blood Angels trial of choice, but others such as Dark Angels, Imperial Fists and Space Wolves also put this trial to their recruits. War is life in the Imperium, and although some worlds know this more than others, planets used for recruitment usually have some form of regular combat going on. This trial is less a trial and more a means of assessing potential candidates.
Right.
Astartes may have observed headhunting particularly strong champions, or they may watch them from orbit, observing infighting between tribes on Imperial feral worlds. In this trial, recruits are tasked to head out into their homeworld and slay a beast for causing chaos or harm to their world. Many Imperial worlds host highly dangerous life forms or worse, orc infestations. The recruit must go out alone, or sometimes in small groups, and return with their captured hunt, often alive. With these group hunts though, the nasty twist is that there can only be one successful recruit, so they could turn on each other, break off alone to achieve or steal victory. I personally question the validity of this test. Fighting to the death to show strength over others seems plausible, but setting out in as a group, but then betraying other recruits seems to go kind of against the traits of...
Right, it would go against the idea of the Space Marine. The whole core of the Space Marine is that, you know, you're brothers in arms. You're going to stand with the person next to you to death, you know? So I could see that being kind of contradictory, but I could also see it being a part of a test to just see exactly how far people are going to go and what they're going to do. And it could be a reverse test situation. They could sit there and say, you know, hey, only one person can come back and be alive, blah, blah, blah. That could be like something false that they're seeing to see if they will actually, you know, jump on each other like a bunch of pack of feral dogs or something like that. And in the end, they actually really wanted them to not do that and work together and just see how well they did, or, you know, etc., etc.
Astartes look for in recruits. Anyway, on returning home, they'll be required to slay their successful hunt in a ritual in front of their community before being led successfully away in the throes of glory. Lastly, the quite vague challenge trial. And this is exactly what it is, some form of probably unsurmountable challenge. This could be to attempt to fight a full-blown Space Marine in combat. An impossible task, you might imagine, but usually remember this is the 41st millennium and bizarre occurrences are abound. While the thought of a child fighting a Space Marine seems insane, remember the task is usually to see how they approach it, not necessarily their success.
How they approach it, how long they last, their thinking process, you know. Essentially, what are they going to do against insurmountable odds? You know, it's in Star Trek terms, I believe that's the Kobayashi Maru maneuver or whatever, where it's, you know, a simulation that is unwinnable. How are they going to... What do you do in an unwinnable situation? How do you proceed?
Remember, the task is usually to see how they approach it, not necessarily their success. In some extremely rare situations, though, the aspirant may actually beat the Space Marine challenger. As
which would be crazy.
Impossible as this may seem, that individual usually will hold some unusual or rare power and will go on to become a legendary hero of the chapter. The aspirant will also usually be armed, while the Space Marine unarmed and without his power armor. Still, as with most of the former trials, the test here is really about if they can just survive at all, not so much best their opponent. Other arguably more horrific tests though could be non-combat based and test a recruit's strength, speed, mental skill or resistance to toxins. So they might for example be forced to drink nightmarish toxic chemicals, lift weights so heavy they break their bones apart, or evade some kind of horrific dangerous trap. Recruits deemed to have succeeded by whatever standards, however unlikely, will then be restored by chapter apothecaries. Ultramarines and again Imperial Fists favour these trials. Clearly, a great many recruits will not survive this stage of assessment, but even those who fail to be accepted but by some miracle survive will usually be heavily respected for having done so, not just by their families and friends, but by the assessing Astartes.
I would assume if they go through the trials, they don't get recruited, they fail, but they survive and are, like, still physically capable. I would assume the Imperial, you know, army would be, like, chomping at the bit to get a hold of them and get them out there working for them at that point. Or any of the other, you know, can't think of the word off the top of my head right now. Sections or whatever you want to call it. Any other groups, factions, sections of the Imperium that, you know, any of the Assassins Guilds or whatever, maybe even Inquisitors. You know, they might want to get a hold of them and you know, look at potential for recruiting them at that point.
So, not just by their families and friends, but by the assessing Astartes. Having done no wrong but maybe just not made the cut, these surviving but unsuccessful aspirants who were assessed on their home world may return to their former communities, a rare occurrence. Or they may continue on to serve the chapter as a serf, a menial but loyal servant who takes personal care of, say, a Marine's armour and weaponry. Those returned to their homes are extremely few, but surprisingly are not perceived as failures. It would be made clear to all that having just survived, they have shown sheer strength and integrity as an Imperial citizen. They would then likely go on to become a strong leader for that world as Imperial Guard, Planetary Defense Force, or some other leadership.
Neophytes, what is this?
Successful aspirants will now become neophytes. They will move on to the next stage, where they'll begin the early stages of conversion to a full Space Marine, with the initial implantation of the gene seed, and chemical adaptation of their genetically enhanced organs. This could mean immediate departure with a Space Marine brother to the next phase, or it may be that they are allowed to celebrate in their home community before departure. A very huge moral boost for the Imperial community there, and also to help reinforce Imperial values and loyalty. To be able to say your community gained a successful Astartes recruit is no small thing, and statues, paintings, songs and stories will be told for many years, if not generations to come. Neophytes will be expected to engage in training for combat as well as other mental training, as well as following chapter lore. If a neophyte should break chapter lore through ignorance or unthinkably by deliberately doing so, they will expect severe punishments. A neophyte breaking chapter lore will not simply be thrown out, they would likely be mind scrubbed, live out their lives as either, best case scenario, chapter serfs, being menial servants, or worse, forcible amputation and body conversion to life as cybernetic drones and slaves as servitors. That
would suck, man. Dude, a servitor, like the life of a servitor would be like I couldn't think of just about more of a worse life than being a servitor, dude. That would suck.
Successful neophytes immediately will begin conditioning to be implanted with their gene seeds and relevant genetic enhancements. Space Marines must be male because the gene seed is only compatible with male hormones and genetics. So no, you won't see female Space Marines.
No death my snoo, unfortunately.
The neophytes also need to be tested for compatibility. I'm always kind of surprised that this doesn't happen before the recruitment trials, but anyway, so they're tested for compatibility, otherwise as with organ transplants. Rejection would be fatal for the neophyte. Even with this testing, it can still happen later down the line. They will then further have their mental strength checked before implantation of the gene seed begins, to ensure that they are in no way compromised by the forces of chaos.
Okay, so it goes from like recruits to aspirants to neophytes to initiates. Okay. And so the aspirants are the ones where they go through all the trials to see if they actually are worthy of becoming it. Once they get through that and they pass, They then become neophytes, and that's where they start going through the process of getting either implants put in. And then I would assume initiates are where they actually start getting trained as Space Marines.
If all these criteria are approved, the neophyte recruit will now become a Space Marine Scout, or in some cases a full Space Marine Initiate. They will live isolated in the Space Marine Chapter's Fortress Monastery on the homeworld, save for any approved missions. The individual will be tutored on battle methods, tactics, psycho-conditioning, values, and the history of his chapter. The reason these early Marines are titled Initiates is because it is still unknown as to whether they will even survive to the final end process of becoming a full battle brother. 19 organs grown from the chapter gene seed will be implanted to the neophyte Initiate. Some are transplants and others are grown in the trainee Marine's body. The gene seed will also adapt and change and grow the individual's body to become the giant size of a Space Marine, towering over ordinary mortal humans. Much of the body chemistry will be fundamentally reworked during this time, and the gene seed contains genetically engineered viral machines which rebuild the body to the template created by the Emperor. And
again, I would assume that's why they would probably want, you know, kids during puberty, because I feel like it would make the process much easier to go through than getting someone who's basically an adult and having to go through the genetic modifications and body modifications, you know, that way.
Machines which rebuild the body to the template created by the Emperor. Any implant has a potential to fail, and this rejection will automatically end and probably kill the Initiate. As if the odds weren't stacked against them already, this further thins down the number who survive to the end of this arduous process. In brief, the 19 implanted or grown organs to become a full Space Marine are as follows. First, a secondary heart to increase blood supply and capacity. It can also pump steroids and extra adrenaline for battle situations.
Interesting.
The os modular or iron heart. This strengthens and grows the skeleton of a Space Marine so that his bones will contain a ceramic-based mineral which is added to an initiate's diet. After a few years, the Space Marine skeleton will be exponentially stronger than a normal human. The ribcage will have become fused to a solid bone plate, providing extra protection for internal organs.
It's crazy that this process has actually been, like, kind of, you know, worked out in detail to me, too.
The biscopia is implanted within the chest cavity, and this increases skeletal muscular development, essentially muscle density. The hemastamen assists in carrying oxygen and nutrients more efficiently throughout the blood. It also assists in regulating the second and third implants. The Larraman's organ is also placed in the chest and manufactures synthetic Larraman cells. These serve like ordinary human blood platelets, but faster and more efficient. When a Space Marine is wounded, they form fully healed scar tissue in seconds, preventing hemorrhaging. This ability can make Space Marines appear invincible as they take wound after wound. Anything other than the most catastrophic of injuries is going to leave them still standing.
So they have like Wolverine like level of healing almost, essentially, where yeah, they just get cut or shot or whatever, and as long as like the limb isn't falling off, you know, the wound will just pretty much heal instantly and scar over. Interesting.
The catalepsion node is implanted in the back of the cerebrum. It allows Space Marines to avoid the need for sleep, entering them into a form of ongoing coma, allowing their brain the ability to systematically recharge by individual parts at a time. This enables them to stay on duty for hundreds of hours. The seventh implant is the preomnor. It functions as a decontamination chamber above the stomach and will analyze ingested materials, neutralizing any organic or inorganic toxins. It also enables Astartes to eat materials for sustenance that would kill ordinary humans. The omophagia is implanted in the upper spinal cord. It absorbs information through ingested DNA and RNA related to memories. The purpose is to gain tactical or survival information by eating animals or life forms indigenous on a planet.
Interesting.
In addition to a second heart, Space Marines also have multi-lungs as their ninth implant. 3 in fact. This is to give them extra oxygen absorption in thin air environments. In a toxic environment, their ordinary lungs are shut off to allow the third lung to act as a filter for any necessary toxins.
I would also think just in general that would be great just for stamina and war, you know, just general stamina, fighting, endurance purposes. The more oxygen you can get into the body, the more oxygen rich the blood is, the more your muscles can function, and they're already giant, 8 foot plus tall, 400 to 600 pound dudes without armor on. So like, yeah, keeping the muscles oxygenated, and to be able to function properly with all they're doing. I would be shocked if it would be able to function properly without some extra lung capacity.
The 10th adaptation is the ocular lobe. It's a gene seed adaptation that enhances eyesight along the optic nerves. This gives increased accuracy of vision and increased low light sight ability. Lyman's ear is not simply better for more accurate hearing, it enables Marines to resist ordinary human dizziness and for them to be able to filter out white noise and sonic attacks. The Sasan membrane allows a Space Marine to enter a state of suspended animation. This can enable mortally wounded Marines to survive until help or an apothecary's arrival. This hibernation period has been known to be able to last for anything as long as half a century. Melanochrome alters the pigments in the skin cells, allowing Astartes to shield himself from dangerous radiation and heat. Different levels of this in effect can cause physical differences between chapters, such as the very pale skin of the Blood Angels or the darker skin of the Salamanders. The oolitic kidney filters blood to further remove toxins that have been ingested in combination with the 7th organ. It is best not to think of this though like an ordinary kidney, as this organ functions to assist in removing toxins before they have passed through any normal process of absorption. Otherwise, it wouldn't be very useful. It also helps to regulate the advanced circulatory system and other organs. The neuroglottis in the mouth allows a Marine to biochemically analyze things by taste or smell, or determine if something is poisonous.
This is crazy,
or safe.
Man.
Despite their advanced organs, this could still be very useful for a variety of purposes, and it can also enable them to track targets, much like a canine.
I guess the question that I would have would be, how long did it take the Emperor to, like, come up with all these modifications and perfect them, and you know what I mean? Because, like, this is very sophisticated, obviously. I mean, there was a point during, humans' existence in the 40k universe where they were like the peak of existence in the universe. So it wouldn't surprise me if they would be able to do any kind of crazy, genetic manipulation and mutation and stuff like this. But it makes me wonder, like, how long did it take him? How much trial and error did he have to go through, et cetera, before he was able to, like, perfect all these, organs and implants, and to get them to work properly without rejection,
The mucranoid is implanted in the nervous system and, if activated through an external treatment, will cause the Astartes skin to secrete a waxy substance. This will cocoon them to protect them in situations of extended suspended animation, even the vacuum of space or other temperature extremes.
Really? They can live in the vacuum of space? What the good lord?
The Betcher's gland consists of 2 glands implanted in the mouth. These allow the Astartes to use their saliva as a corrosive acid.
Oh, keep freaking yawning. What the... Hey boys, we need to get through this. We're out of, our ammo's low. We want to conserve ammo, but we got to bust down this door. It's, too strong for us to beat through. Just start spitting. Just start spitting at the door. We'll get through it eventually. It's fine.
When consciously activated. This could enable them to corrode bars if they were held captive, or remove doors from their hinges. It also can assist them in eating difficult to break down substances. Some Marine chapters have found that this organ no longer functions or has become less effective over time. The progenoid glands, or the gene seeds, are the critical organs of a Space Marine. They're implanted into the neck and chest cavity and serve as reproductive glands to allow their DNA to be collected upon death and safeguard the continuity of their chapter. Apothecaries of a Space Marine chapter will cultivate germ cells from the progenoid glands to create the 19 organs of a Space Marine, or some of them, because some are grown within the Space Marine themselves. The final organ is the black carapace, otherwise called the interface. This material is implanted under the skin of the chest with the now shell-like ribcage. Fibred bundles then grow inward and interlink with the Space Marine's nervous system. Points for these bundles are pre-cut by apothecaries and form neural connection points. The function of these are to allow a Space Marine to interface with the heavy power armor, or as some would have you believe, the armor's machine spirit. These connections enables faster reaction and maneuverability. Without this, Space Marines would lumber around very much encumbered by the heavy armor they wear. It's worth remembering that this whole process probably sounds heavily traumatic, but consider that it ideally happens on the young neophyte or initiates between the ages of about 10 to 12 years old and should be then completed by age 18. Many are going to suffer critical or multiple organ failure during the process. The penalty, or arguably mercy for this, is usually euthanasia, although conversion to a servitor for the chapter is sometimes an option depending on chapters and their needs. Again, for those families who never see their sons again, in some cases, it's probably for the best. All they need to know is, he's serving the Imperium. Now, more recently, since the involvement of Belisarius' call of the Mechanicum, Primaris Marines are a new breed of superhuman Astartes. Under instruction from Roboute Guilliman, Primaris Astartes are only created from the gene seeds of loyalist Primarchs. They contain 3 additional organs, and their gene seed is considerably more genetically stable. Guilliman had instructed Call to develop these new organs with the goal of creating the Primaris, and their additional organs are the sinew coils. This enables the sinew of a Primaris Astartes to be durametallic, contracting with immense force, gifting them extreme strength and his body further resilience. This increased strength will literally enable them to crush the skulls of their enemies with bare hands. The magnifact, and this small lobe is inserted to the brain cortex. It secretes a hormone to increase the body's growth functions, with the goal of also intensifying further functions of the other implanted organs. Apparently, this organ is in fact half of the immortis gland, the god-maker gland of the Primarchs. For undisclosed reasons, Call was only able to discover.
It's pretty dope. The God-maker gland. That just sounds awesome. Like, you know, set me up an appointment to get one of them.
The right half of this gland, not the full gland itself. The left half had been fully eradicated from Imperial records by either the Emperor himself or others unknown. And third, the Belisarian furnace. This organ lies dormant and connects to both a Marine's hearts. In times of immense physical stresses, it expels chemicals simulating combat stimulants, increasing the regrowth of tissue, bone and muscle. This is a short-term use organ and requires time to recharge after using.
Interesting.
Now, if this incredibly harrowing physical conversion is successful, the neophyte or initiate will have completed the arguably most challenging part of his transformation. However, during these changes, they will still be undergoing some of the most challenging training and assessment regimes humanity had ever known. Psychological and physical conditioning, subconscious therapy, and endless live battle training sessions. Their senses and mental abilities far exceed ordinary humans by the end of this process. Their mental toughness is beyond measure, and an Astartes will essentially ignore pain and environmental conditions. An Astartes will assault enemies who, to simply look upon, would make an ordinary human suffer a complete mental break. Many, through endless conditioning, will develop photographic memories. Much of this round-the-clock therapy will also neutralize any latent character flaws and create stable, highly single-minded warriors. This endless mental and physical indoctrination will also teach and reinforce high respect for authority and to expertly carry out orders. With that said, it's important to remember that Space Marines are not mindless drones or clones. They are individuals, and while always following the rule of command, if a situation warrants it, they are entirely capable of disobeying orders if they believe it to be ultimately necessary. The consequences for this, though, could be, and usually are, potentially highly severe. At the end of this process, the few successful young children who were pitted against one another and survived the ordeals to reach this point will be welcomed as successful young initiates, becoming full Space Marine battle brothers, Imperial Astartes, the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Astartes aging, though, does seem somewhat random, with some living even as long as 10,000 years. But given the fractured and strange nature of time in the 41st millennium, it can be really hard to put accurate expectancies on this, and many Marines who are not killed may reach at least half a century in age. It's no exaggeration
Yeah, I thought they could live, you know, at least a few hundred years. But 10,000 years? Like, what? That's a long ass time just for, like, I mean, saying a basic space marine, you know, sounds funny because obviously they're pretty crazy. But, like, I thought that was something that would be, like, something that yeah, I could understand the Primarchs being that way because, you know, and even Custodes, you know, the higher level ones, but even Astartes, the regular space marines living that long, that's crazy. It has to be probably like a rare thing, right?
Who are not killed may reach at least half a century in age. It's no exaggeration to state that on successfully becoming an Astartes, these men would be far from what you would recognise as human.
Yeah.
Their extended lives and nearly unbreakable bodies are truly no prize. Their lives from this point on are spent in the sole act of defending humanity and the Imperium of Man.
They know nothing but war.
Accepting that their lives will be lost in battle at some point in the future.
Yeah, I mean, like, you think about that, like, your life is literally nothing but war, nothing but fighting and death. That's it. You're expected to fight until you die. That is just how things go.
And the Imperium of Man. Accepting that their lives will be lost in battle at some point in the future, probably in horrific circumstances. They'll never see anyone they had ever known in their lives again. Families, friends will die far before they even begin to think of such things. Space Marines are the protectors. Humanity in the 41st millennium stands on a precipice. We've known many horrors, disasters, and catastrophes, the ending of many worlds, but the next millennia will be the most critical. Threats surround humanity, some still difficult to gauge just how severe and if we can resist them. Our hope is in the Astartes, and the Imperium of Man, and the Emperor. With the Primarch rulebook Guilliman returned, there is a glimmer of hope in the darkness.
Man never changes, so war never changes. Yeah. That is quite the quote. Just wait and see if there's anything else here at the end of the video. Seems like it's not the case. Grey Knights Part 1, we're definitely going to be looking into that. Gonna be looking into that soon. But, alright. Well, there you go. Space Marine Creation and Recruitment. A guide on becoming an Astartes by Luetin. Very fascinating and informative video, honestly. There's a ton of information in there that I really didn't know about, you know, with the processes of the Astartes. Specifically really about, you know, all the various implants and organs and the length of time it takes for the body to adjust to it. You know, like I said during the video, I would assume they would want to get, you know, a kid around puberty just so that as the kid is growing naturally, it's able to grow with those implants in them. You know, I would think someone that is more of an adult, it would be much harder for their body to adjust and would be more likely to reject any of those organs and implants. But it was pretty cool going through all the various processes. You know, they go to the various different worlds. Potentially, most of them recruit from their home worlds. But there are outliers where, you know, I guess for whatever reason, you know, they hear about, you know, an exceptionally physically capable, you know, person on some kind of random world. And they even stated that they get recruited quite often a lot from criminals, and criminals get forced to go through the process, you know, whether they want to or not, because that's what they need to do to survive and replace their numbers. But very interesting process, you know, going from, you know, the recruiting stage and having to go through all the various trials, and if they survive those trials, becoming a neophyte, and then, you know, from there to an initiate, and, you know, etc., going through the implantation process. The implantation stuff is the stuff that is the most interesting to me. I did not know that there were so many implants, and the various effects that it did, and like the spitting of acid. I mean, he did say that that's kind of an implant that seems to not function as well anymore and may not necessarily be used as often, but it's just a lot of stuff sounds insane. And their rib cage becomes fused and just becomes basically an internal armor plating for their organs, you know, extra hearts, extra lungs, you know, chemicals put in their system to, you know, increase muscle fiber density, function, reaction, nervous system reaction, implants to tie into their armor to make them work and function properly. Night vision, basically built-in night vision, you know, ocular implants. A lot of very fascinating, interesting stuff. And then with the new Primaris, which there's a video that I want to get into on that too, to learn about the Primaris Astartes. You know, they're like another step above. They're like, I guess, like an in-between Primarchs and the Astartes, the normal Space Marines. I guess the question that I would have about them would be, you know, what would they compare to Custodes? I would assume Custodes would still probably be above them. I would assume in the like tier of things would be like Primarchs, Custodes, Primaris, and then Space Marines. I would assume that's how it goes. But let me know about that. But very interesting, very informative video. Very good video. Very good video. I will have the link to this video down below in the description, as well as a link to Luetin's channel. So go, if you want to go there and watch this video without my commentary, that'll be down below. Go check out his channel, give him a sub, all that good stuff. And yeah, like I said, I'm gonna probably put an announcement on the community hub page, whatever you want to call it, on, you know, my YouTube channel for the Dark Tide game night. So look for that. Like I said, I'm gonna try to, we're looking to do that not this coming Saturday, but the Saturday after the 9th, probably around like 5 p.m. Eastern time, starting around then and going for maybe like 4 to 6 hours. And I will do my absolute best to get as many people rotated in to play some games with as possible, because there was a decent amount of people that said they were interested. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how many people sign up. And there's a link to my Discord down below in the description, so if you want to join my Discord, you can. For those of you that want to get on Discord with me and, you know, jump in comms, you know, etc., etc. Also, you're just welcome to join up and use my Discord to find some people to play with. If you guys want to jump in there and use it, and find some people to play various games with, Dark Tide or whatever, and, you know, feel free to use it. It's open for you guys, so, you know, go ahead and just jump on in there. And I got some people in there, you know, putting up pictures of their minis and stuff that they've painted and stuff. It's a lot of really cool stuff, so go in there and check all that stuff out. But thank you guys, I appreciate it. If you're watching this video here to the very end, it means a lot. Thank you very, very much. I hope you're having a wonderful day or night, whatever time it is. I hope it's going good for you, essentially. Hope it's going good for you. If you enjoy this video, consider leaving a like and a sub, as it definitely helps me out. You know, I got the membership tiers up because we got partnered recently, so check those out. Give me any kind of feedback or criticism, because I would like to hear what you guys would like to see added or done to those. And yeah, I guess that's all I really got to say right now. So thank you guys very much. Hope you're having a wonderful day. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.